Good morning. I want to discuss with you today briefly an issue that I think is relevant to our larger discussion on what is worth trusting and using and what is not during this COVID-19 pandemic. A lot of people have lost their trust in big pharma, in doctors, in the FDA, in anybody who issues any sort of guidelines, and an increasingly sizable number of patients of mine and people that I know, and judging from the comments from this channel, I think it's a larger scale phenomenon than in just my little corner of the world, where an increasing number of people are turning to what they perceive as being something more natural, generic, over-the-counter, cheap products that are not representing the financial greedy interests of big pharma or big corporations, and instead they are trying to derive the same benefits in terms of protection against COVID-19 or health in general from smaller companies. And I think that's a worthwhile pursuit in the sense of it's worth encouraging small players, it's worth encouraging companies that are bringing something new and valuable to the market and increasing competition so as not to allow the big players to have monopoly over everything. And that's true not just in health, it's true in big tech, it's true in everything in life. This is one of the aspects of capitalism, of free market, that I really actually appreciate myself. And I think a lot of you do too. However, in doing so, I think it's important for us to remember that we have to exercise the same level of caution and attention when we choose products, and also be alert to notices of deficiencies when they happen. And today I want to discuss with you such an example just to make the point. Again, I'm not here to recommend certain products. I'm not sponsored when I do this. This is purely for educational purposes. I have no stake in big pharma or in the smaller companies. This is what I would tell you if you were my patients, if you were my family. And this is what I'm telling myself. So not too long ago, in fact, maybe 2 weeks ago, the FDA issued this notice on hand sanitizers. And they say, these are hand sanitizers consumers should not use. This is off the FDA website right here. There's a little history behind this notice. You see, back in, I think it was back in March of 2020, when the pandemic was raging and we didn't really have any significant effective treatments at that point, let alone a vaccine. The FDA, which regulates who puts stuff on the market, whether it's drug, whether it's like personal care products, I should say, they came up with a notice and they said, look, because of this emergency, because of this crisis, we're going to lax the requirements that we normally have for people to bring on the market and produce and sell hand sanitizers, for example, because there was a shortage of that. If you remember, some people hoarded those things and everything disappeared. And so they laxed those guidelines, those requirements for companies to be allowed to do that. And all of a sudden, a bunch of new companies flooded the market with these products, some of them with created names, including plant-based, including all natural, and all kinds of attractive things. And people, including myself, have took advantage of that. Plus, they had lower prices, so it all looked really nice and good. Until a company out there in the here in the U.S. actually, by accident, they weren't looking specifically for this, but in their process of testing things, see this lab, it's called ValueSure. They make their living by selling these special products or services, I should say, to big pharmaceutical companies, where if you have a pharmaceutical company that produces a drug or some product and they want to have it tested for purity, so they don't have contaminants or other things that could land them in legal trouble and harm consumers, they contract with these third-party labs, and ValueSure is such a lab where they do their testing for all kinds of potential impurities and contaminants and cancer-causing chemicals and so forth. And so this lab was perfecting their techniques. They were doing some random testing, from my understanding, and they decided to test some of these hand sanitizers for benzene. Now, benzene is a organic compound that is banned in consumer products, whether it's something that is intended to be taken by mouth or injected or even applied topically. It is banned because it is intensely carcinogenic. It can cause cancer. And in drinking water, where you cannot always ban water, right? There are places where people's drinking water still have traces of benzene. The regulatory guidelines state that it should not have more than, I believe, 15 parts per billion of benzene in drinking water, per billion, okay? So in any case, these guys started to do random testing, and they found benzene in a number of these hand sanitizers. And the word got out. They notified the company. In particular, there is one particular company. Here is a table, by the way, of all the products that they tested. I'll make it bigger for you. It's been put out at the request of the public. There is such a regulatory provision here in the United States where, as a consumer, you have the right to request such documents, and they are made public. So here's what they found. You know, there's a big issue, for example, between this company here, Art Naturals. You may have seen these guys selling their products, and I've certainly seen them myself, where they would be on the shelves, you know, in the grocery store and such, and they would be cheap, and they would have this nice label that they're all plant-based and natural and so forth. And I'm a vegetarian. I like plant-based stuff, so I use them. But anyways, what they found is that it has benzene, and not a little bit, but if you look here at the amount of benzene, they have 16 parts per million. Remember, in drinking water, they limit it at parts per billion. So this is at least 1,000 times more benzene than in that guideline. The company is fighting back and claims there's nothing wrong with it, and this is false reporting, and they're going to sue these guys and so forth. So there's a feud going on there, and I'm not going to get into that because I'm not private to the details. The reality, though, is these guys stand by their findings, and not only did they find benzene in our Naturals hand sanitizers and other products. Look at this. They found it in this SS Lavender and Herbs sanitizer. They found it in a bunch of stuff made in China, but not only. You know, there is peppermint scented, infused with aloe vera and vitamin E. You know, stuff that sounds good. Star Wars, all kinds of stuff. Winter mint. You know, the table is fairly long, and it gives you the amount. Some have more, some have less, but it's in million parts per million, you know, rather than billion. So it's definitely a lot higher than you would hope it is in all this stuff. So the question is, you know, what is one to do? I mean, how are we going to be able to protect ourselves from all of this? Is this stuff that we should care about, or we should be worried about? And I say, of course. You know, like I showed you earlier, the FDA came out with this way later. I mean, these guys in the ValueSure lab was doing this research about 6 months or more time ago. They notified the companies, they notified the FDA, and it took the FDA about 6 months before they came up with this notice. And even then, what they do, instead of warning consumers that the whole suite of products from our Naturals, for example, might be best to avoid, they say, well, only this particular batch is contaminated. ValueSure says it's more than a batch. So again, a little bit of a contradictory information there, and we have to see how it all plays out. But suffices to say that nothing in this world is 100% sure, even if it has a label that says natural or plant-based or organic even. You have to do your homework, and you have to be on the lookout, and you have to be aware that people can lie to you. So one of the points that I wanted to make today here is, number one, is not just the big players, the guys with a lot of money that will pursue profit above safety. In fact, I think one could make a reasonable case that once you become a big player and you have a lot of stake in terms of reputation and legal risk, your willingness to spend money and ability to do so, because you do have money, is much better than some small player from China who is pushing a bunch of 99 cents hand sanitizer on the US market in the middle of a pandemic with lax FDA regulations. You see what I'm trying to say here? So we have to be flexible in our thinking and not go just one thing, and I'm going all natural and I'm going to toss all this big pharma stuff because it's junk and it's toxic and it's going to kill me. The reality is much more nuanced, and like I often say in these episodes, we have to stay flexible, stay wise, and judge things, and be willing to look for negatives in both sides of the issue, not just in the one that we kind of hate for some reason or another. The second thing that I wanted to bring to you here, and it's a question actually, and I want to see in the comments, and I'll also post it in the poll section later today, hopefully. I wanted to put together a presentation, maybe a little bit longer than 10 minutes, where I will be discussing the causes of cancer and how much we can prevent and how much we can't. In other words, what are things that we can impact lifestyle-wise to reduce our risk of cancer versus things that is genetic or random stuff or coming from the environment, and we really can't do much about it. I think you will be surprised when you see the numbers. But I want to know, are you interested in stuff like that or not? Because if there's no interest, I'd rather spend my time doing something else. I appreciate you commenting and being here with me. So let me know in the comment section below. And subscribe. If you also press the bell button, you'll get notifications whenever I post new stuff like this, and you'll be able to be one of the first to see it and comment on it and interact with me. I appreciate your interactions. Time allowing, I enjoy interacting with you, even if you don't agree with me. That is always a learning experience for me, to the extent that we can keep our interactions civil and honest. I don't appreciate trolling like most people don't. But if it's an honest interaction, even if we are on opposite sides of the issue, I truly appreciate that, and I think it's a growing experience for me, if nothing else. So until next time, I look forward to your comments, to your opinions, to your reactions. You stay healthy and you stay wise, my friend.